Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 221 of the Tick Bootcamp podcast. The title of today's interview is Parisian Warrior, an interview with Julie Comble. My name is Richard Johannesson.
And I'm Matt Sabatello.
Now, we named this episode the Parisian Warrior because this is a young woman who had traumatically induced Lyme disease. Her mom and dad went through a really ugly divorce. And unfortunately, her parents actually even targeted her during the course of the time that they were having their challenges before they went through their divorce. That suppressed her immune system and caused her Lyme to become chronic.
Rich, it was really interesting to hear from Julie about how Lyme disease is treated in France. Julie suffered from chronic pain due to Lyme disease. She had neurological Lyme symptoms and even had Lyme carditis or Lyme of the heart. She kept being told by doctors in France that Lyme doesn't exist. Lyme can't persist, and it's all in her head. In fact, her dad said she's just lazy and crazy and that she's not really sick. But Julie kept fighting and fighting until she found a doctor in France who recognized Lyme disease and helped her get better.
Matt, regardless of where you are geographically, the Lyme disease journey seems to be the same. It's a difficult disease to diagnose. Doctors will, in many cases, suggest to you that you're crazy rather than sick. Your family will invalidate you, and you really have to suck it up on your own, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and fight the fight on your own. And that's exactly what this young warrior did. So, Matt, without further ado, I'm really excited to introduce the Parisian Warrior, Julie Comble, to the Tick Bootcamp podcast. Hey, Julie from Paris, and welcome to the Tick Bootcamp podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so glad.
We're really excited to have you as well. So can you please share with us first, where do you live? I know you live in the Paris area. Where specifically in France are you from?
In the south of Paris, in Massy, a little town.
And is that where you grew up?
Yes, I was born there, and I live there too.
Okay, and talk to us about what your childhood was like. What was the educational system like, and what kinds of social activities did you engage in as a young girl in the south of Paris?
I did some dance, some gymnastics, I went to the swimming pool. I was a happy little girl.
So you engaged in a lot of athletic activities, and talk to us about what your education was like. What kinds of things were you studying in addition to the social activities that you were engaging in?
I was going to school like all the children. I have good grades. I was a serious student. A really normal girl.
So talk to us about what your family situation was like. What did your mom do? What did your dad do? And do you have any siblings?
I'm an only child. My mother is a German professor. And my dad is an engineer, informatics.
Okay. And now, talk to us about what you thought you were going to do as a child. What was your vision for your future? Meaning, what were you dreaming about, and what were you working toward as a child?
First, I wanted to be a veterinary. Then I always wanted to work in journalism.
So what kinds of things were you doing to try to achieve these dreams and goals that you had set out for yourself professionally?
I wrote a lot. I loved writing, reading too. I always had facilities in French at school, literature.
So now, Julie, as you were growing up, and you were engaging all these different activities that you were engaging in, and you were studying in school, did you know anything about ticks or tick diseases such as Lyme disease?
No. I first learned about ticks when I was 13 during a journey with school in the dark forest in Germany. We went on a walk, and the teachers told us about ticks and Lyme disease, but They told us that we can heal really really easy with antibiotics during 3 weeks, and that's all.
So now when you went on this trip where the teacher in Germany taught you about ticks, told you about Lyme disease, and told you that it was easy to heal, that you could get better if you had 3 weeks of antibiotics, did that cause you to be concerned about ticks and tick diseases? And did it cause you to change your behavior at all?
No, I just paid attention like all of us, but I remember I thought it will never happen to me.
So you were made aware of this potential problem, but the way you were taught about this problem led you to believe that it wasn't a big deal.
Yes.
And because it wasn't a big deal, you really didn't have to change your behavior to protect yourself from this problem.
Maybe I got sick that day. I don't know.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about when your symptoms first started. When did you first start to feel sick from symptoms that you now know to be your Lyme disease symptoms?
I just got to high school. I was 14, 15 years old, and I got really tired. I lost around 17 pounds. And 3 months after my parents split up, 1 year later, I got tired, pain in my body everywhere, like sprains. It began with my back, then my legs, my arms, my hands, my feet, etc.
So, Julie, you said the first symptom you began to feel, and this is when you were about 14 or 15 years old, was fatigue. Now, we know that that is the #1 symptom that almost everyone with chronic Lyme disease has in common. We've seen that from a lot of the polling that's been done by LymeDisease.org, for example. And when you started to feel this fatigue, did you talk to your parents about that, and did you seek out any medical assistance?
Yes, I saw my doctor, but we thought that it was because of the new rhythm in high school. I also had my horse, so my life changed. It was really how to say that? It was really tiring to go see him after school with homeworks, etc.
So you said it was your horse was causing you to have a lot of responsibilities at that time,
Yes.
and your doctor was writing off your fatigue as you being overcommitted, right? You were working and you had to go to your horse and you had to do all that work. So your doctor was explaining your fatigue as you just being too busy.
Exactly, and a lot of stress, I think, too.
So let's talk about that, Julie. So you said that that your first symptoms began shortly after your mom and dad went through a divorce.
Yes.
So now, one of the things that we often try to talk to our guests about is to identify what was happening at the time that their symptoms had first started, right? And we like to look at first whether or not there was some clear indication that perhaps they had come in contact with a tick or were infected in some way. And you've already identified that you went on this trip to Germany where they were specifically telling you to be concerned about ticks. And then the second thing, of course, we always look for is, were there any immune disrupting events? Meaning, was there something monumental in their life that could cause them stress, that could cause a suppression of their immune system? And now it sounds to me like your mom and dad going through this divorce was that kind of experience for you. So can you talk to us about how your mother and father's divorce impacted you emotionally, and do you believe that played a large role in your body's inability to fight off the bacteria and the viruses that caused you to be sick?
I think it's because they didn't protect me at all. It was very violent. They split up in front of me.
I'm sorry.
And my dad had a really bad comportment with me. So I saw my mother crying every night during months and months, years, I think. So I couldn't really say what I thought, what I was feeling like. I was like a punching ball for my parents.
So in addition to watching all of this unhealthy behavior between your parents, you also became the punching bag. And unfortunately, they were mistreating you, not just by behaving badly in your presence, but they were also, unfortunately, treating you badly because they were both in an unhealthy place.
Yes.
So Julie, you said you went through this period where you also lost a tremendous amount of weight. You lost 17 pounds when you're only 15 or 16 years old, right? I'm sorry, 14 or 15 years old. Now, did you call that weight loss to your doctor's attention? And what did the doctor, if anything, say about now the fatigue that you were feeling and all this weight loss that you were suffering?
She was a bit worried. I did blood tests, and I think she tested Lyme disease at that time, but I knew it later, but it was negative, obviously. No, she took it seriously.
So the doctor took, you said the doctor took the weight loss, and I guess you don't look like a big person. I know our listeners can't see you, but you look like a little person. And then you, of course, very young and probably much thinner. That extreme weight loss was something you took seriously and your doctor took seriously. And you said that was the first time that Lyme disease did in fact come up and you were tested, you were given a blood test for Lyme disease?
Yes.
Now,
Lyme disease, polyarthritis, all of that diseases, muscle disease, arthritis, the classical.
So the blood testing that your doctor had given you had come back negative. Do you know what type of blood test the doctor had given you to determine whether or not you were suffering from Lyme or some other tick diseases?
Yes, it's called ELISA test in France.
Oh, so it was a French test?
Yes.
Okay.
They're really bad.
Very bad. Well, and there aren't many good tests even today, but that was some time ago for you, and obviously testing was nowhere nearly as good as it is now, and it's not great now, unfortunately. So let's talk about how your symptoms progressed over time, and how you were getting sicker and how that was impacting your life.
I remember my mom had to wake me every morning to go to school because I didn't wake.
So the fatigue was so severe you couldn't even get out of bed.
Yes. I remember sleeping for 22 hours.
What other symptoms were you suffering? You talked about having back pain and leg pain and arm pain and pain in your feet. So talk to us about the pain and where you were feeling that and how that pain was developing.
It started in my back. I had to see an osteopath almost 10 times in a few weeks. Because that was the only thing that relieved me. And lastly, how to it it got in my legs, my arms, my hands, my feet, everywhere. It was like I had big sprains everywhere.
So how are these symptoms, your fatigue, your all of the pain that you were feeling, how is this impacting your life? Was it impacting you at school? Was it impacting your ability to care for your horse? What other parts of your life were suffering as a result of these developing symptoms?
I stopped riding my horse, and it broke my heart. I started to miss school during days, then weeks, and it was very difficult to work at home.
So Julie, now I see from the information you shared with us before we started the podcast that you did go to college. In fact, you went to one of the top colleges in the world. So talk to us about how you were able to overcome all of these challenges enough to get into one of the top colleges in the world.
I don't think I understood that question.
Okay, so let me ask the question. So talk to us about how you were able to, despite having all of the pain that you were suffering and the fatigue that you were suffering and the weight loss. I mean, it looked like you were wasting away, right? You weren't able to ride your horse anymore. But despite having all of those problems, you were still able to get into one of the top colleges or universities in Paris. So yeah. Talk to us about how you were able to get through all of those illnesses and those difficulties to still get into a very good college.
I continued to work a lot, even at home. And I prayed a lot to have my exam, my final exam before going to college. Before that, I had good grades too. That helped me a lot.
So where did you go to college, and what did you study when you went to college?
I went to the Sorbonne in Paris.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I learned first history and German.
And talk to us about how your symptoms, your illness, were impacting your ability to study at the Sorbonne when you had gone there, and how did it impact your ability to study history and German?
I was exhausted, and I was taking morphine to go to school because of the pain that was unimaginable.
So talk to us about how your illness was impacting you socially, meaning your mom and your dad had broken up. They were divorced and living apart. How was your mom treating you and treating your illness? And how was your dad treating you, and how was your dad treating your illness?
My mother didn't understand me. I think she was feeling responsible for my illness. And I think she was in so much pain by herself that she can't see how bad I was.
So Julia, your mom, because she was in so much emotional pain after being in an unhealthy marriage and an unhealthy relationship, she couldn't see past her own pain. So she just simply couldn't see what you were going through.
Yes, exactly.
So talk to us about your dad. How is your dad responding to your developing illness?
My dad was totally in denial, and he still is today, mostly. He thought I was having a great time. In French, we say avoir la flemme. That I didn't want to work, that I did want to party, to have fun with my friends. And then he thought I was really that I had mental illness.
So your dad essentially thought you were lazy.
Yes.
And he thought you were mentally ill.
Yes.
And to this day, he still doesn't believe, despite you having a Lyme disease diagnosis, which we're going to get to in a minute, despite having a Lyme disease diagnosis today, your dad still doesn't believe that you are physically ill.
Not really. I think he believes it, but it's still difficult to understand the impact in my life. He's minimizing a lot my symptoms, my suffering, etc.
So let's talk about that window of time where you're getting sick, but your doctors are not able to give you a diagnosis. Do you believe that the medical system's failure to give you a diagnosis in part made it difficult for you to get the support that you needed from your mother and your father?
First, everyone thought I had psychological issues, that it was because of my parents, because of my mother's suffering, and that was not false. In fact, that doctors didn't want to see other things, like a disease, a real disease.
So it sounds like your parents' divorce became the focus of everyone's attention, right? So yes. Your parents go through this very unhealthy divorce where they're attacking one another and engaging in behavior that was traumatic to you. They were attacking you, so you had to deal with that trauma, which now becomes immune disrupting to you. And while you're dealing with this emotional this emotional challenge that their divorce is presenting to you, you're also getting physically sick. But because they happened at the same time, in part your mother and your father, because they had their own emotional challenges, couldn't focus on your physical illness, and it was easy for them to write it off. But it also sounds like the medical community was also defining your illness as a psychological illness because of the trauma of your parents' divorce.
Yes.
So, Julie, how are you doing socially at this time? You graduated from high school and you're now going to college. Do you have time to make friends, or do you just have enough energy to get through school and really don't have the time to have a social life while you're in college?
I was really isolated from the world. I had one friend, my best friend, that is not my best friend anymore, but that's another story. And that's all. I couldn't make friends at college because I was so sad and so in pain. I think people didn't want to interact with me.
So, Julie, you had taken, it seems, a rigorous course load when you were at this top university. So talk to us about all of the different courses that you were taking while you were at the Sorbonne.
What the courses is?
Yeah, but you said you were studying history and German, but I understand that you also studied to become a medical secretary, or you started to study in the medical field.
Yes, that was 2 years after that. It was a solution. How to say that? I wanted to do that courses because I thought it would be easier for me because you're sitting in front of a desk, and that's not really tiring. I was really wrong. But, in fact, I just wanted to work, to have a normal life, and I had lost so many years in college, and to fail because I didn't graduate those years in college. It was a really big issue for me. It was really hard to accept. So I thought, go and work and make short studies.
So I'm also wondering if, and again, I know you were having your challenges in college, and you were so sick, and you were getting sicker and sicker and unable to study at the level and perform at the level that you wanted to perform. But I'm also wondering if you were feeling called to move into the medical community and work as a medical secretary because you were sick, and that would give you an opportunity to learn more about illness and illnesses so that you could begin to treat yourself.
Yes. It was for humanity too. I wanted to interact with people. This human side of that work was interesting me. It was really I don't know how to say that in English.
No, but I understand. So, but you felt called to go and help other people who were having medical issues just like you, right?
Yes, I wanted to help other people in a way, in the way that I could do.
Right. So because you had been treated poorly by the medical community in a lot of different ways, you wanted to make a difference, and you felt called to go and help people because you could understand them having been sick yourself.
I thought I could change a bit that word, that clinical word, medical word, but I was a bit wrong.
So let's talk about your diagnosis. You were finally diagnosed with Lyme disease by a doctor, at least clinically initially. How old were you when you got your diagnosis?
19.
And talk to us about how you felt when you finally had a diagnosis. You were sick for all these years. You lost all this weight. You were just feeling terribly. You were having difficulties describing to your family and to your friends what was wrong with you. How did it feel now that you had a diagnosis?
I knew it deeply in my heart because I've done so much researches about Lyme disease before. But I asked my doctor if it was true, if it was really that disease, because so much doctors before told me that it doesn't exist, that it's not chronical at all, that we can heal it so easy.
So Julie,
I didn't believe it.
Julie, what I find so frustrating about what happened for you in France, just like we have here in the United States, is that you were tested for Lyme disease with a
Yes.
really bad test years before you got your proper diagnosis.
Mm.
Now, did those doctors years ago explain to you that the testing was not perfect and you could still have Lyme disease even with a negative test?
Yes, exactly. And
Did-
my
did-
tests are still negative today.
And Julie, did your doctors tell you that the first time you got tested years before you got diagnosed?
No, it was my generalist doctor, and no, she didn't know at all that the test could be negative.
So what brought Lyme back into the picture? Meaning, why did you test for Lyme again? And what made you and your doctors think Lyme disease when you were 19 years old?
Because in January 2017, I started to have neurological I don't know how to say that.
Neurological, the hard word.
Neurological issues, thank you. Like memory loss, difficulties to concentrate. And then in July, I had heart issues. So I went to an association because I had fibromyalgia diagnosis at that time, and treatments, but that didn't work. And I met a woman in that association, and when she heard my journey with all of that symptoms, she told me about Lyme disease. So I did a lot of researches, reading, etc. And I heard about that wonderful doctor, and I went to see him. But I knew it, that it was Lyme disease. I just needed to be diagnosed by a doctor.
So Julie, you were diagnosed with fibromyalgia, which I can't pronounce, I'm sorry. And you were treated for it, and the treatment didn't work, correct?
Yes, correct.
But while there, some of the other people who were treating told you it could be Lyme disease, right?
Yes.
And did the doctors where you were being treated suggest it could be Lyme disease, or was it just the patients?
Not at all. Not at all.
So I find it odd that it's the patient community leading you to your proper diagnosis and not the doctors. We have the same problem here in the States, and clearly you have that same problem over there in France.
Yes.
So talk to us about the fibromyalgia. What kind of medication were you given that didn't work?
I had antidepressants, anti-epileptics, anxiolytics, muscle relaxants, many medications that destroyed me.
When you say they destroyed you, Julie, what do you mean by that? Do you mean they destroyed you physically, mentally, both? Can you give us a little more information on that?
Both mentally and physically, because I had how to say that, I finished like an alcoholic with antidepressants. I don't know the word.
Is it like an addiction? Meaning
yes, an addiction.
Yeah, a lot of these medications can be addicting, and then your body depends on them, and then you feel even worse if you try to stop. Is that what you mean?
Yes, exactly.
So I find it, again, I find it very strange that they misdiagnosed you with fibromyalgia because you had chronic pain, which can be attributed with fibromyalgia, but you also had heart issues. you also had brain issues, you had neurological issues, and they sort of ignored those other symptoms that were causing severe problems for you and fit you into this perfect little container to say this is what you have, and wouldn't come back to Lyme disease.
Yes, exactly.
So, Julie, here in the United States, Lyme disease was and still is a very controversial disease, meaning some people don't believe chronic Lyme is real. And I know you noted that is true in France as well, but is there controversy over Lyme in general, meaning even just getting a proper diagnosis is hard because there's so much political and fighting going on with the government and the patient community?
Exactly.
So you found your doctor by a recommendation from another patient while treating for fibromyalgia, correct?
Yes. A few years later.
Oh, a few years later.
Then fibromyalgia diagnosis and treatments, I stopped it a few years earlier.
Gotcha. So I want to come back to where Rich left off with you with your diagnosis. So when you went to see this doctor, I think you mentioned it was a clinical diagnosis, meaning solely based on your symptoms, not blood work. Is that true?
Yes.
And that's not uncommon because the testing is so bad. And thinking about it, do you think your other doctors should have been more open to diagnosing you based on your symptoms rather than a blood test, which they should have known wasn't very accurate?
Yes. But they don't want to recognize that the tests are so bad.
Do you think that the doctors don't know the tests are that bad, or do you think that they sort of just don't want to admit that they are that bad?
I think some don't know, and I think others don't want to admit it.
I totally agree. So when you got your diagnosis, talk to us about how you felt, because you knew you had Lyme for many years. You were sick for over 4 years before you finally got the validation and confirmation from this Lyme doctor. So how did it feel for you when you finally got confirmation that you had Lyme disease?
I thought I'm not crazy. And I didn't really believe it, but it was painful too, because I thought, okay, I'm really ill with a very difficult and controversial disease, and it's gonna be really hard to heal it, because I had so many symptoms, different symptoms. I was afraid too, and in the same time, I was not relieved because my blood test was still negative, so I didn't have that in front of me. The result was still negative. So for many doctors, I don't have Lyme disease. So I'm not, I felt like illegitimate with the disease.
So Lyme made you feel illegitimate because you didn't have a test or something definitive or a scientific piece of paper in front of you saying you have Lyme disease. And many doctors don't even recognize it. So you felt uncomfortable with your diagnosis.
Yes.
So talk to us about the fear, because I think it's a really important part. And you did say you were afraid when you got your diagnosis. And I know I was as well. Once I started realizing how severe this disease is, you can't help but become afraid. So how did you work through that fear and still move forward to treat despite all you knew about how bad Lyme disease can be?
That's a difficult question. I think I didn't do so much. I just did with it, and I thought, okay, now it's time to fight, to take that medications and to hope to get better.
Julie, before we talk about your fight, which we're going to get to, I want to focus on your friends and family when you got diagnosed. So you mentioned your dad thought you were just lazy and crazy, which is horrible because you clearly are not, right? You are strong and you are a fighter, and because of your own persistence, you got a diagnosis and were able to get treatment to feel better. But how did your mom, and I know your grandparents play an important role too for you, how did your mom and your grandparents take your diagnosis with Lyme disease when you finally got diagnosed?
I think my mom was shocked because she thought that I was really sick for a reason, but to have the official diagnosis, it was difficult for her, but she didn't show it to me. She's really intimate with her emotions, so she didn't share it with me.
Now, did your mom believe that fibromyalgia was your diagnosis and that was it? Or did she always question it like you did? Because you said you knew, Julie, that you always had Lyme disease. Did your mom agree with you? Or did she think that maybe you were just off down some, road that may not be accurate and that you already had your answer?
I think she was questioning a lot. Because of antidepressants, anti-epileptics, anxiolytics, etc. She was really shocked that I took that medications at 15. She was really afraid, and she saw that didn't work on me, that I wasn't feeling well or better with those medications.
So it sounds like your mom, Julie, knew there was something else going on because you
Yes.
weren't feeling better.
Exactly.
I mean, you were a young child having to take morphine, I think you said, correct? Just to be able to function. Is that true?
Sorry, can you repeat, please?
Sure. So you were a young child and you
Yes.
had to take morphine, the pain reliever,
Yes.
morphine, the pain drug, just to be able to function. I mean, that's not normal. Clearly, you were going through excruciating pain just to survive.
Yes.
So your mom had to see that, I'm sure.
Yes.
So now talk to us about, you got your diagnosis and now you're going to fight, right? Okay, now I know I have somebody who believes me. I have this diagnosis. We're going to go and we're going to kick Lyme disease's butt. So what was your plan to treat Lyme disease? What medicine did you use to finally treat Lyme disease?
I had many antibiotics during 2 years, every month. I also made a real detox of my body. I took many vitamins, paid attention to my alimentation, my feeding. I was really serious in taking medicines, and that's all.
So Julie, you said you were on antibiotics for about 2 years. Was it a many different antibiotics that you would change over time. So that seems to be the case with many people, where you use different antibiotics together and you change it up over a period of time. And it's not like for you, that was 2 years. Is that what you did?
Yes, different antibiotics.
Do you recall the names, Julie, of any of the antibiotics that you were
Yes.
taking?
But I don't know if it is the same name in English. I had the cicline, amoxicillin, Rocephin, azithromycin, Rifampin. I think it's all.
So Julie, it sounds like you were taking antibiotics to treat other things besides Lyme disease. You mentioned Rifampin, which we know is used for Bartonella. You mentioned
Yes.
other things. I know from talking offline, you use some things for antiparasitics as well. And a lot of those are used for Babesia. So you did things like the Malaron for Babesia. So did you and your doctor suspect that you had other tick-borne illnesses from a tick bite, like Babesia, possibly Bartonella, and some others?
Yes, I did a blood test with Lyme disease for Bartonella, Babesia, and others. And Babesia and Bartonella are positive. And that's how my doctor diagnosed me, because he told me, if you have Babesia, you have Lyme disease.
So you had a positive Babesia and Bartonella test, but not Lyme. So they were treating you for all three, assuming you have Lyme, which is probably, I mean, I think
Yes.
that's a very smart move to treat all three.
Exactly.
So you did mention also, Julie, I believe you said you had to do some detox things. Is that what you said earlier?
Yes.
Talk to us about that. So what does that mean for you? Because you were taking antibiotics to really kill the various bacteria, parasites, etc., the Lyme disease, the Bartonella, the Babesia, but then detoxing is important also. So what things did you take to detox, and how did they help you?
I took plants, like I have to say it in English.
Are they like binders?
Binders? What is binders?
Something to help take the toxins out of your body, to kind of pull them out of your body.
Exactly.
So they absorb all the toxins and help them eliminate by, you know, by sweating and peeing and pooping and that kind of a thing.
Yes.
So it sounds like your doctor, which frankly, here in the States, if you go to a regular, what we call a Western doctor or an American doctor, they don't really focus on detox. They focus primarily on the kill protocol, which is getting rid of the bacteria. Now, your doctor who diagnosed you, in addition to that, also said you have to work on getting rid of the die-off and the toxins, which is really important because you can get very sick as you kill the bacteria. So was this a regular general doctor who talked to you about detox, or was this a more of a naturopathic doctor in Paris?
It's my Lyme doctor. He's working in a hospital, so I don't really know what type of doctor it is. I just know that he's treating Lyme disease, and pretty good. But for detoxing, I have to say I did it on my own. He told me about detoxing, but not as far as I went in detoxing. He told me, yes, take some plant pills to detox, take glutathione, but I made some researches to do it in the best way I could.
So Julie, you're a hospital doctor, which I think it's great that a hospital doctor even talked to you about detox, because I can share with you that when I was diagnosed, it was by a hospital doctor as well. And their only recommendation, which in fact they called it a cure, was 4 weeks of antibiotics, one antibiotic, only one, and that was going to cure me, I was told. So I think the fact that your doctors were educated enough to treat you for not just Lyme, but the other co-infections, which are very common, and address detox is a very, I think, a very positive, thing for you, because your other doctors weren't even thinking Lyme. And when you brought it up, they said, right, I mean, you told us, your other doctors told you Lyme doesn't exist. Lyme doesn't become chronic. And then you found a doctor who said, they're wrong. Lyme is real. It can be chronic, and we can treat you. So I think it's really powerful that you finally found a doctor who understood Lyme, and as you said, is now a Lyme specialist there in France. And for anybody listening who is from your community, are you comfortable sharing this doctor's name so they can look him up if they're interested?
Yes, it's Dr. Zaidan in France, in Compiègne, in the north of France.
And I think that was Dr. Zaidan, right? Zedan, correct?
Yes, exactly.
In the north of France. Thank you. Because again, I think it's really important to share good Lyme doctors when we find them, because they're so hard to find, Julie, as you know.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit more about your treatment, because as you mentioned, your hospital doctor told you to take some plants and herbs and some glutathione, but then you did some research on your own to really make sure you were detoxing while treating so aggressively with the antibiotics. So what else did you do for detox?
Not so much. I took some mix of plants, like I don't know how to say it in English. Pissenlit.
Julie, did you say liquid plants?
Sorry?
Did you say liquid plants? I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Liquid plants, a mix to help detoxify the body.
Are those like tinctures? I think that's what we call them, where they're like it's ground up plants mixed with some sort of like alcohol base, like a liquid herbal dropper.
Not tinctures. It's a mix that you take in the morning before having breakfast. It's a cure that you can take during 1 month.
And there, so it's like a liquid that you drop. Is there a dropper?
No, it's a liquid that you mix to a glass of water, of juice.
Gotcha. So I do know from some talking offline a little bit, Julie, that you, from an herb standpoint or a plant standpoint, you did try things like grapefruit seed extract, devil's claw, garlic capsules. You did cimento and banderol by Nutrimetics, which are really powerful herbs to treat Lyme as well. So are these some of the things that you were talking about?
Yes.
So did you find these on your own, all of these plant-based medicines, these herbs?
I found it mostly by my own. I did some experiences on myself, and it can be dangerous. I have to say it, but it went well with me. So, and it helped me a lot.
Julie, I'm just sitting here in awe listening to you, because you did so much on your own. I mean, you're the reason you got diagnosed. You're the reason you were able to detox properly. You're the reason that you combined antibiotics, which we call Western medicine, and Eastern medicine, which are the plant medicine, which I believe is the best approach when you have such a chronic form of Lyme disease and co-infections. And a lot of these things like cimento and banderol, and nutrimetics are really powerful to kill a wide variety of tick-borne illnesses and viruses and other things, and also help you detox. So you were really killing all this stuff with Western medicine, all these antibiotics and all these, Malaron and anti-parasitic drugs. Then you were supplementing them with detox plant-based medicine, but then also treating and killing the bacteria and viruses with additional herbs and plant-based medicines, as you call them, the liquids. So give us an idea, because you did say that, you were an experiment, right? Which is, we have to tell you, Julie, from our experience, Rich and I, you are our 221st guest that we've interviewed. So we've interviewed 221 people with chronic Lyme on this podcast. And the ones that have the most success are the ones that use what we call trial and error, because there's no clear plan as to what's going to work to heal you from chronic Lyme. And what you described as your science experiment, I like to think of it as, is really trial and error. You do your research, you consult with your doctors, and you try something. If it works, you keep at it and keep doing it. If it doesn't, you try something else. And I think that's the approach you took from what you're describing, correct?
Yes.
So give us some tips, because people listening are in our situation. They are still dealing with Lyme and trying to get into remission. What are some things that you did that didn't work so well for you? Some cautionary tales, things that you did and you said, I probably shouldn't have done that.
That I didn't work on me. Tacinide. But it was my doctor who gave me tacinide, hydroxychloroquine. It didn't work on me. In the beginning, Artemisia didn't work on me, but today it's my only medication that I took by cures when I feel that I'm not so well.
So Julie, you said Artemisia was one, correct?
Yes.
And that's an herb, Artemisia, right?
Yes, Artemisia annua.
And that did not help you much?
In the beginning, I had to take it 4 or 5 times before it really did a thing to me. And today, it's my only medication when I feel that I need to treat a bit, because I'm not taking antibiotics anymore.
So let's talk about that, Julie, because it sounds like when you say it didn't work in the beginning, was it a week? How long was it that you were taking Artemisia and it didn't work?
3 weeks. 4 or 5 times. During my antibiotics treatment, my doctor gave me Artemisia.
And did it make you feel worse, or it just didn't help you at all?
In the beginning, it didn't work at all, and then it made me feel worse.
So it went from not helping to making you feel worse, which is probably a Herxheimer reaction, right? Probably it was working too good, where it was making your body almost like overloaded. Exactly. And then it's become the only thing that you're on today, now that you're feeling better. And I think that's really important, because we often get people asking us, Julie, here's this one herb or this one drug. Does it work or does it not work for Lyme? And that's a hard question, because we're all different, as you know. Yes. But also there's another important thing that we've learned from this podcast, and it's timing. So what I mean by that, Julie, is something that may not have helped you or possibly hurt you like it did you in the beginning has become your go-to herb now that you're feeling better, and it's helping you stay better. So it's so hard to say, will this work for me? Because as you heal, things that didn't help in the beginning can help you greatly later on in your journey. So do you think that's true of Artemisia and other things that you tried throughout your healing journey?
Exactly.
And the other one, I believe you said, Julie, was it, and I'm probably going to say this incorrectly, was it the fluconazole? Is that the one?
Yes.
And I'm just
Fluconazole,
gonna I'm going to spell it. I'm sure we're going to get messages asking us what I'm talking about because I cannot pronounce the word. It's the Fluconazole. Correct? That's the one that didn't work so well for you.
Exactly.
And from what I understand about fluconazole is, I'm sorry, I'm laughing as I'm saying it because I know I'm not saying it correctly. What I understand about this medication is it's an antifungal drug. And it really helps from studies with neurological Lyme disease. They found, and we did an interview, Julie, with Dr. Tim Hasted from Duke University here in the States, who is working on a protein inhibitor to kill all Lyme bacteria in your body. And it sounds like this drug, the fluconazole, which again I can't say, was a first attempt where they found that what it was actually doing, and I have a National Institute of Health article up here, it's actually from PubMed, that they found that this drug will actually inhibit a protein called this P450 protein, which is required for Borrelia to survive in your brain. So with neurological Lyme disease, the Lyme bacteria in your brain, this fluconazole drug actually prevents a protein from functioning that keeps the bacteria alive. And this seemed to be pretty promising back in the early 2000s. In fact, 2004, I think this article was published. So I think a lot of doctors were using it. So I'm curious, what kind of response did you have to this medication? Did it just not help? Did it make you feel worse? You know, what was your reaction to this drug?
It was not so promising for me. But I don't know because I took it with antibiotics. So I don't know if the combo worked or if it was just antibiotics that helped me.
When you say, so give us a little more information, Julie. When you introduced this fluconazole, did you feel, do you think it was a Herxheimer reaction? Do you think it was your body getting overwhelmed? Or do you think that it just didn't do anything at all for you?
It didn't do anything at all.
Gotcha. And again, it's hard to tell because you were on antibiotics as well, so it's hard to assess how much this really potentially could have helped you. So let's kind of turn that question on its head. And now I want to ask you, what treatments did you do, because you did many, what treatments did you do that have actually helped you in your healing journey that you would recommend to people that are listening to this podcast?
I think the treatment that saved me, it's a bit difficult because I had a facial paralysis and paresthesias, but my doctor gave me Rocephin IVs twice and Malaron, and I think that medications really change it all.
So you said that's the Rocephin IV, I believe, right? The Rocephin IV and the Malaron IV?
Yes.
So Malaron is for Babesia, I believe. And then the Rocephin is really like a strong version of a broad spectrum antibiotic for Lyme. So I actually was on Rocephin as well. So now when you did the Rocephin, it sounds like your facial paralysis had improved. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it was magical.
So talk to us more about this magic, Julie. So beyond the facial paralysis, can you give us some more detail about what symptoms improved by using an IV of Rocephin?
All of them.
Really?
I have 80% pain less. It worked on my heart issues during a few months. It worked on my memory loss, my concentration. I felt like I was awaking from a really long sleep, like my brain was actually back to life than before.
So this is, I think, really important because you were on oral antibiotics. You were taking them with water and taking them, orally, and you weren't feeling as good. But when you did the IVs and got the IV injections, that's when you really start to feel better. So the oral medication maybe helped a little bit, but the IVs were your game changer, it sounds like.
Yes.
So, and just to repeat that, I mean, this is because, and the reason I'm focusing on this, Julie, is people reach out to Rich and I all the time and ask us, I've been on every oral antibiotic in the world. I've done all the combination therapies of antibiotics in the world. I'm not doing much better. I'm considering doing IV antibiotics. What do you think? And, you know, I was on them. And for me too, it really helped me get over that hump. And then I had to do some more after that, but they really, really were helpful for my neurological symptoms. And it sounds like for you, they were really, really important because it cut your pain by 80%. And that was one of your major symptoms. You had chronic pain. It also helped you with your cardiac symptoms. We call that Lyme carditis or Lyme in the heart. And it helped you with those symptoms. It helped you with your neurological symptoms, your brain fog and your concentration as well. And that was your game changer. I mean, so now were you doing Rocephin and Malaron at the same time, or did you do them at separate times in the IV?
Separate times.
So talk to us then about, so you kind of just gave us an overview of what IV Rocephin did for you, but what did IV Malaron help you with?
For the same reasons than Rocephin, but I had really big axes with Malaron. It was really hard to leave it.
So it was really, really helpful to with the same things. It made you feel even better.
Yes, but with really big axis reaction.
Oh, and now Julie, did you do Malaron after the IV Rocephin?
I did Rocephin once, then Malaron, then Rocephin twice, then Malaron again.
And did you herx at all from the IV Rocephin?
Herx.
You mentioned you had a Herxheimer reaction, I think, from the IV Malaron. Like you felt bad, right? So so Rocephin didn't make you feel worse because it was so overwhelming to your body because it was killing so much?
No, I was really tired, but I felt better really fast. In a week.
In a week, you felt better from the IV Rocephin?
Yes.
Talk to us about the Malaron and the herxing, because you said that was really hard and that you didn't feel well because it was so aggressive, killing things in your body. What kind of symptoms did you have from the IV Malaron?
Really big headaches, worse than migraines, a lot of nausea, big pain everywhere, like strains, like electrical like electricity in my body. I had I don't know how to say it in English, but it's when you fall because you lost you see dark and then you fall.
When you faint.
You faint.
You faint, yes. So you were fainting from the IV Malaron because it was so strong and you were feeling very sick. So I know you mentioned also, I believe you mentioned taking Rifampin too as one of your oral medications earlier on. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Talk to us about Rifampin, because we've been hearing a lot about Rifampin from people who have told us that when they've had a lot of depression and anxiety and mental health problems, which are real symptoms of Lyme disease and Bartonella, that the Rifampin actually alleviated or almost eliminated their mental health symptoms when they took Rifampin. So I guess the first question is, were you struggling with depression and anxiety? And if so, do you think that Rifampin helped you with that?
It's difficult to say because I had a depression, but the first year of college, so I was 17, 18. So it was a few years earlier than that. I don't know if I can say I had anxiety with Lyme, but I felt like something was not, I don't know how to say it. I had the impression that people walked really next to me, behind me all the time. Some hallucinations. Maybe I was a bit paranoid sometimes, but I didn't feel so depressed than I could be before.
Julie, with the hallucinations and the paranoia, those are common symptoms with Lyme disease and tick-borne illnesses. Did they get better as you treated?
Yes.
Do you have any, and it may be hard because you did a lot of things at once, is there any one medication or a few medications that you feel helped you the most with those psychological symptoms or the neurological symptoms, the hallucinations, the paranoia, and the little bit of depression that you may have had?
I would say Rocephin, but with all the antibiotics, it was disappearing. I'd say,
So it was getting better with the oral antibiotics, but then IV
yes,
Rocephin really made it like so much better.
but it was really long, and Rocephin changed it all.
So we know you were on antibiotics for 2 years, you told us, Julie, and you got diagnosed when you were 19. So you finished when you were about 21, and now you're 23 today. So
Yes.
what have you been doing when, from the time you stopped antibiotics at 21 up until today for maintenance? Are you still doing herbs and plant medicine? Are you doing anything from a detox standpoint? What's your current maintenance medication that you're taking now?
I'm taking a lot of vitamins to stay healthy, because my doctor told me to do so. And when I feel that I'm a bit tired, a bit sick again, I take Artemisia, or I can take oregano oils too, capsules that my doctor gave me. For example, I had COVID-19 in April, and I had to take Artemisia after the vaccine too. And now today I'm taking Artemisia too, because I'm a bit tired, but that's all.
So Julie, you had COVID-19 in April.
Yes.
And because it set your immune system back, it sounds like maybe you got a little sick again, maybe Lyme and things stirred up a little bit. And with Artemisia, you were able to recover pretty quickly after being sick, because a lot of people worry about getting COVID-19 and having a major setback and not being able to improve. But it sounds like you're saying you need to be able to have tools available for when things happen to make sure you don't have you don't go backwards and backwards and backwards.
Yes.
So for you, you felt yourself getting sicker, you took some Artemisia after COVID, and you bounced back pretty quickly.
Yes.
And are there any other things you take, or is it just Artemisia today when you feel like you're not doing so well, from that standpoint, from a killing standpoint?
Just Artemisia and vitamins. During winter, I take grapefruit seed extract too, because I'm a bit fragile when it's freezing cold. I can be sick easier, so I'm anticipating.
So Julie, it sounds like you take grapeseed extract in the winter when you normally get sick because it helps strengthen your immune system and can either prevent you from getting sick or make you less sick if you get sick in the wintertime. Is that what you said?
Exactly.
So, I mean, give us an idea as to where you're at today health-wise, because you were really, really sick. I mean, you were taking morphine just to manage your pain before you got diagnosed. And you had a lot of symptoms: neurological with your brain, cardiac with your heart, full body wide with your chronic pain and your chronic fatigue. I mean, what percentage, and this is a hard question, I'm sorry to even ask you this, Julie, but what question would you say you're recovered from Lyme disease?
I don't think I understood the question.
Yeah, it's a hard question, and a lot of our guests don't like when I ask this question. But give us how much healed would you say you are? Meaning, how much better are you doing today than you were when you were at your worst? How are you functioning today? How are you doing today, health-wise?
I would say 70-80%. It
That's
depends on the day.
That's an amazing recovery, Julie. It really is. And before I hand you back over to Rich, I could talk to you forever at this point, but I can tell Rich is getting annoyed with me because he wants to talk to you too. That is there anything else that we missed that you did from a treatment standpoint to help you with physical healing or emotional healing that you want to address and share with our listeners to help them before Rich takes over?
I think when we feel really, how to say it, sad and meaningless, we have to talk to someone, to talk to our friends, to our parents, to a psychologist. It's important to talk about that, about how you feel, about what scares you, etc.
So Julie, let's talk about the transformation that you've gone through while being on this Lyme disease journey, meaning what were the beautiful parts of this journey and what did you learn about yourself that you would not have learned had you not gone through the suffering that you've had to deal with on your Lyme disease journey?
I learned that I have a really big strength, and it impressed me.
So you did learn how strong you are, and you learned how impressive that is, and that is wonderful. But talk to us about how you learned how to do all your research and how you learned how to get all the resources and how you were able to do that despite not having the support of your family that you would certainly have loved to have had.
I did a lot of researches on Google. I read a lot, and I created my Instagram account, and I talked to many people and learned about them too a lot.
So talk to us about that. What inspired you to reach out to other folks in the Lyme disease community to help them? Why did you feel the call to help other people?
Because I wanted to help us, because I wasn't, there was not so much Lyme communities when I got sick. We didn't talk about it on social media, and I needed to talk to people like me, and it was difficult because they were pretty rare, and it helped me a lot to to feel understand in my suffering, in my fears, what I was going through.
So now let's talk about the last question we ask everyone on the Tick Bootcamp podcast. There is a young man in your life I know you are
Yes.
very happy with. So congratulations on finding someone that you care so much about. Let's say, God forbid, right after this podcast, he came walking into your room and he had a tick biting him. What would you recommend that he do so that he wouldn't have to go on the challenging and difficult Lyme disease journey you had been on?
I would take an appointment with my wonderful Lyme doctor very quickly, and I think he would do a blood test immediately, and I think he could have the same antibiotics than me, and I could give him Rifampin seed extract, Artemisia, all the herbs, the plants that helped me too.
So you would recommend he take both an Eastern and Western approach to healing, because that's what ultimately led you to the successes that you've had.
Yes, and he will go to see my doctor immediately.
Right. So you would offer to him both the team that you built for yourself and the tools that you built for yourself, and the combination of the team and the tools would put him in a position where, in your view, he would have the greatest likelihood of overcoming the challenges that you had to overcome. Well, Julie, I can't thank you enough for sharing your beautiful story with the community of Tick Bootcamp, and thank you for all that you do for the Lyme disease community. Thank you for listening to the Tick Bootcamp interview with our guest, Julie Comble. To our listeners, we have a call to action. First, if you'd like to learn more about Julie Comble, please visit our Instagram page at le.combat.de.julie. Second, if you enjoyed this episode of the Tick Bootcamp podcast, please share with your friends by using the social media buttons you see at the bottom of the post. Third, Tick Bootcamp has created a Tick by Blueprint that has been inspired by the information that has been provided to us by past podcast guests. We urge you to visit our website at tickbootcamp.com to view the blueprint. Please note we would appreciate any input or any improvements you would like to offer. Fourth, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify to get your automatic episode updates of our Tick Bootcamp podcast. And finally, we thank you, our community, for your comments on our past podcast episodes. Please take a minute to leave us an honest review on Apple Podcasts, on Instagram, or on our website. We make it a point to read every single one of the reviews we get. Thank you, as always, for listening.